Ukraine may or may not be Russia someday, Trump suggests while announcing $500 billion rare earth agreement. Well, while he does announcing that, Ukraine announces a successful strike on Russia's Saratov oil refinery. Military confirms that. And in a Blitz interview as a third topic with Peter Dickinson, editor, Atlantic Council Ukraine Alert Business Ukraine magazine. Good afternoon. My name is Henry Keane, and we are UATV English and English-speaking Ukrainian state media in everyday persuasion to deliver hard truth in easy terms for you, for the whole free world, directly from Ukraine. U.S. President Donald Trump suggested that Ukraine may or may not lose its sovereignty to Russia, adding he wants compensation for the provided U.S. aid regardless of how the war ends.
They, Ukraine, may make a deal. They may not make a deal. They may or may not be Russia one day. But we're going to have all this money in Ukraine, and I say, I want it back. Donald Trump, President of the United States.
The U.S. president has repeatedly pledged to broker a swift peace deal to end the full-scale war nearing its third grim anniversary, claiming that the conflict would have never happened if he had been in office in 2022. So, following up on his earlier proposition of ensuring the U.S. support for Ukraine in exchange for rare earth minerals, Trump claimed that Kyiv has essentially agreed to a deal on $500 billion resource. However, details on such a deal remain murky. In the interview, Trump again claimed that the U.S. had provided more support to Ukraine than European partners, placing Washington's contribution to over $300 billion, while the United States Congress has indeed allocated over $170 billion to Ukraine since the outbreak of the full-scale war in 2022. President Zelenskyy claimed that less than half of that assistance money actually became available for Ukraine. The EU and its member countries instead have made available $145 billion in financial, military and humanitarian assistance during the full-scale war. Ukraine has significant reserves of minerals including titanium, uranium, iron, manganese and lithium. In addition, it has significant deposits of rare earth minerals that are of a strategic importance to the United States. The U.S. delegation, led by Vice President J.D. Vance and Trump's special representative, retired Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, is going to visit Munich and meet Zelenskyy during the Munich Security Conference. The participants will discuss the prospects for ending the war. Well, America may or may not think that if it has secured $500 billion in Ukrainian natural resources, that same naturally means that Putin will stop his natural bombings of his sites of interest. In Ukraine, that's right, may they belong to America or may they not? Because may you or may you not believe in it, that is what dictators do. Destroy everything. Ukrainian forces struck Russia's Saratov oil refinery in a strike overnight on February 11th, the General Staff of Ukraine's armed forces said after reports of drone attacks in the region. The Ukrainian military reported a confirmed hit and a fire at the Rosneft facility. The full extent of damage is being determined, it added. This beautiful attack was carried out jointly by the unmanned system forces, the military intelligence agency, HUR, and the Special Operation Forces of Ukraine, as well as other units, according to the statement. The confirmation of the attack on the Saratov oil refinery came after earlier reports of another successful drone attack against the oil refinery lying some 1,500 kilometers away, which is 930 miles from Ukraine's border.
The Saratov oil refinery is one of the key facilities in Russia's fuel infrastructure. Its refining capacity reaches 7 million tons of oil annually. The refinery is crucial in supplying fuel to the Russian military. Andriy Kovalenko, head of Ukraine's Center for Countering Disinformation.
Ukraine has increasingly targeted Russian energy infrastructure, including oil refineries and fuel depots, to do the obvious, to disrupt supplies to Russian forces. The strikes are part of a broader strategy, though, to weaken Russia's military logistics and economic resilience amidst ongoing war. In particular, Kyiv has stepped up long-range attacks this winter. Recent drone strikes hit a refinery in Ryazan, a distillery in Tambov Oblast, and a chemical plant in Bryansk. The Razan oil refinery, one of the Russia's largest, later suspended operations due to the damage. So I would say it's working. Russia's seaborne exports of petroleum products declined by 9.1% in 2024, reflecting mounting challenges to its fossil fuel industry, including Ukrainian drone strikes. Not us here at TV, but Reuters reports exactly that. Also, Russian refineries possess the lowest quantity since 2012, as rising production costs, falling prices, and an export ban on gasoline strained operations. Wow. Exports through Baltic ports also is falling and fell by 9%, while shipments via Black and Azov Sea ports dropped by 10%. Well, notably, exports from Tuapse plummeted by a third, largely due to drone attacks and operational disruptions at state-owned Rosneft refineries. Well, what can I add here? A drone a day keeps putting away. Editor in Atlantic Council, Ukraine Alert, Business Ukraine Magazine. I give you Peter Dickinson on the line. Hello, Peter. Thanks for joining.
Hi, pleasure to join you.
Right, so I'm craving for some answers, like that Ukrainian natural resources mayhem. Well, to be honest with you, I seen one comment just today that I liked a lot. In a section below Trump's interview to Fox News, I believe so. Let me quote it for you. It's funny how they have to pretend this wasn't always the plan. But my question is, in what way it is bad to give resource to save blood, rather than vice versa, as some suggest?
Well, I can understand how some people are a little bit cautious about the optics of paying the Americans for military aid in the form of Ukraine's natural resources and Ukraine's national wealth, as it were. But I don't see. I think it's perfectly reasonable for
Absolutely.
America to expect something in exchange.
Yes.
And more importantly, I think that this is a very, very interesting way of getting America invested in Ukraine for the long term. This is a very interesting way of getting the Americans to be engaged, not just today and tomorrow, but going down 5, 10, 20 years down the line, to have a major American economic interest in not only Ukraine's survival, but Ukraine's success. So I understand why there is a reticence, why some find this to be distasteful, perhaps, or very, very overtly opportunistic from the Trump administration, perhaps. But I think there's a lot of benefits. I think there's a lot of logic to it, and there's a lot of potential advantages to it in terms of the war itself now and going forward, into the future, the relationship between Ukraine and America and the need to make sure that America remains engaged.
Well, absolutely. I can't agree more. And you say 10, 20 years down the line. I may be 50 because I was once in non-ferrous business. I've done business with rare earth metals, just by the way. Huh? So I've been selling this stuff. So I know that this is a very specific material and the cost is enormous, but you have to invest billions of dollars into production. So my second question is, say deal is done. All right. So say war is stopped for the time being. And say Ukraine makes a deal also with Trump. And we, as partners, start mining and selling whatever we're doing. Okay. So then, all of a sudden, one fine day, a Russian missile just shows up and destroys the mine, let's say, or the office and kills people. And Russians are like, well, we have no idea. What are you talking about? Just as they do all the way along, with Azerbaijani plane that they downed and murdered hundreds of people. So my question is, Trump is going to step up militarily after that, or not, do you think?
Well, I think it might be an issue for Trump. It will probably be an issue for his successors, because this would be something further down the line. But yeah, this is
collective
the classic argument.
Right.
When Russia's invasion of Ukraine began in 2014, President Obama at the time in America brought together his security experts, and the first question he had was, please tell me why Ukraine is a vital security interest for the United States of America. Because I don't know, essentially. Obama was basically saying, this is not really our problem. This is not a big issue for us. So You can argue in terms of the strategy. You can argue in terms of the very, very grave, in my opinion, consequences of a Russian victory in Ukraine for international security. That the entire system of international security would collapse. But that's in the sort of theoretical realm. You could argue also that it wouldn't be the case. Some people feel that's an exaggeration to say that we will enter a world of a geopolitical jungle where might is right. That might be the case. Some aren't convinced by that argument. But I think if you bring in a very pure economic argument,
Absolutely.
say, look, we've got $500 billion of American assets there in that country, we can't let Russia take them. That's a very, very strong argument. And I think that whether it's Trump in the White House or his successor, whoever it may be, they're going to be very hard pushed to say, you know what, let's let the Russians just take it. I think that's not going to happen. And so, I think that's a part of this deal that we're not seeing enough now. The idea that if America becomes the key partner for the exploitation of Ukraine's huge natural wealth, that will anchor Ukraine into the Western world, and it will very much cement this long-term partnership between Ukraine and America. So I would look beyond the immediate optics of paying Trump off for weapons, and look at what that would mean long-term going forward. Because this is not a matter of just coming in, digging something up, and getting out, as you point out. This is a long-term thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, like 500 billion is just for starters. Pardon my French. It's way more. I mean, trillions and trillions of dollars, even with the part of natural resources of Ukraine is occupied by Russia. Even that amount is absolutely huge. So, thank you for that answer. Now, I wonder, why is that warm tonight? Is our studio? Oh, sure. Oil refineries are burning in Russia. So some say it's just a pinprick. It does not matter at all. Not so sure about that. I think a drone a day keeps putting away, and it is working. I think that it is working. Experts are down in general. The tactics not only is an eye candy, but it's actually is very pragmatic militarily to set ablaze these oil depots. Am I right?
Well, I think it's difficult to be very specific in terms of assessing the damage because the Russians are very guarded about the information that they release to the public. Frankly speaking, they lie a lot as well. They conceal the economic data. They hide the realities. So it's very hard to pinpoint and say, okay, exactly we see X percentage drop in output or X percentage drop in GDP as a result of these attacks. However, we can see some very specific incidents where Western or international bodies have said, okay, that's stopped there. Production has ground to a halt here. Exports from this port or that port have stopped. So we can be specific in terms of saying that there are clearly some significant damage. There is clearly some significant damage being done to Russia's energy industry, and especially its energy export industry. Now, that's going to have an impact, if not today or tomorrow, then further down the line. The energy industry is the lifeline, is the lifeblood of the Russian war machine. It is literally the fuel, the engine of the Russian war machine. Right. Without it, it's questionable how long Russia can continue waging its war. Now, sanctions have tried to target the energy industry as well, but they've been ineffective or partially effective, let's say. They work very slowly. We're talking about years. We're talking about maybe looking ahead to 2026 onwards. That's too long. We don't want. Ukraine can't wait that long. By attacking the refineries, and also I would point out not just the refineries. We're also seeing attacks on key nodes in the system here.
Exactly.
Key transit points, logistical points in the system,
disrupting
ports of departure. So Ukraine clearly has a plan to dismantle systematically, very methodically, Russia's energy infrastructure, its energy export infrastructure, to rob Putin of this cash cow, of this source of income, and they're going about it in a quite impressive way, I would say. We're getting every day now. You wake up in the morning, you go onto social media. the first thing you see is a refinery or a port
Right,
or
set ablaze.
something similar
Right.
ablaze in Russia. So
Right.
it's clear. I think it's clear that Ukraine has a plan to do this, a very methodical plan. They're putting it into action. They're doing it very professionally. They clearly have the weapons to do it. They've clearly developed the sophisticated long-range capabilities of their own without relying on the West, also crucial. And I think, although we don't know, I think they've also been given a tacit nod from a lot of their Western partners, perhaps also the Trump administration, to say, you know what, that's okay, because we know the Biden administration was very, very frustrated by attacks on refineries. They publicly said, we don't like that. We do not approve of this. We're not seeing that sort of criticism in the public sphere from what Ukraine's doing now. So I think it's reasonable to assume that Ukraine has the plan, it has the capabilities, and it also has the green light from partners to do that. So the question really is now how far they can go ahead with these attacks, how successful that policy will be. And the other factor I think is worth noting is that Russia is really struggling to defend its infrastructure here. I think Russia here is suffering from what is usually seen as its biggest advantage, the fact that it's so large.
Right.
Russia's just too big. It's too big to defend itself.
Right. So, well, you were asking just a seconds ago. So, how far can Ukraine go? How far or how low can we go? How far can we go? Yeah. Are you talking about Greenland? So, are you maybe afraid? Maybe that Donald Trump is afraid that until Ukrainian drones reach Greenland and shell a old depot there, it's all right. No.
Well, I mean, Greenland. I think Siberia would be the target.
Yeah. Exactly.
I think
right. Siberia, Greenland.
Yeah, I mean, I think more in terms of how comprehensive the destruction can be, because the main criticism of these attacks, I think, from a military point of view, is that the drones that they're using, Ukraine is using, are the explosive capacity, the explosive loads they can carry are not very big. So while it looks very dramatic, they can't always inflict huge damage. So the question is how quickly Russia can repair these facilities. Now, what we're seeing now in these attacks, I think, is, again, another important point, is that we're seeing the same facilities hit again and again and again. So that's perhaps one way that Ukraine can respond to the absence of very, very large-scale weapons they can use. Perhaps they'll develop larger-scale weapons going forward in the coming months. There is talk of Ukrainian cruise missiles, Ukrainian ballistic missiles. At the moment, it's mostly drones. But by hitting these plants again and again, and also presumably by hitting key nodes within these plants, they can potentially really break up Russia's ability to operate this massive energy export industry, which is so important to the country.
Amen to that. Before asking my last question for tonight, I want to do a small remark. Just recently, I've noticed somewhere in my news feed, I see a picture of French Mirage 2000, was it 2005th generation, and there was a header telling that Russian oligarchs are keen to pay $1 million to a fast Russian pilot that's going to bring down French Mirage. So I think in this picture and in these news actually is Russia at its best worst. Oligarchs are paying dollars to Russian pilot to down French jet in Ukraine. And that's dollars. I mean, not even rubles. And that I'm not ashamed at all to say that they have stolen billions and trillions of dollars in Russia, from Russian people. And that is okay for Russian people, that oligarchs are actually making such a dirty proposition to a pilot. But, I mean, this is more like emotional. Oh, thank you for giving me the vents for this. But my next question, Munich and Ramstein. Do you have any expectations? I will be in Munich, probably seeing President, probably talking to Keith Kalloch. Well, maybe, if I'm lucky. But I will be certainly speaking to people from high profilers from Europe. But what do you expect, Mr. Dickinson, from Munich and from Ramstein? Do you expect anything?
Well, I think, I mean, I wouldn't. I think one thing we can say for sure is that Ukraine will be at the top of the agenda at Munich. So that's already a positive. because the great fear has been and remains that Ukraine will simply slip off the agenda. It will no longer be a major issue, and people will forget about the war. So I think it's clear that Ukraine will be the number one issue on the agenda throughout the Munich conference. That's a very big plus for Ukraine. It's a very big plus for the West, but specifically for Ukraine. So that's welcome. I don't think we'll see any major breakthroughs. There was speculation that we'd see Trump's peace plan laid out. Now the talk is actually that won't happen. I think now there's a recognition that Trump actually doesn't have a peace plan in its truest sense at this stage. I mean, he has various ideas, but he's still very much feeling his way through this. He doesn't have a specific plan. His messaging keeps changing. So I think what we're going to see at Munich is going to be a lot of discussion between key players, so between J.D. Vance, other senior members of the Trump administration will be there. They'll be talking to their European colleagues. They'll be talking to their Ukrainian colleagues, to President Zelenskyy. So there's going to be a lot of engagement, and I imagine we'll hear a lot of very encouraging sound bites coming out as they all say how they're committed to Ukraine, how they want to stand with Ukraine, and the Trump administration probably will also look to be underlining this idea about the exchange, the resources exchange, because that's so important for their base to be able to say, we're not suckers, we're not just giving money away, we're doing a deal with the Ukrainians. It's not just about some very broad defensive democracy or opposition to fascism or Russian fascism. We're actually here also doing a deal and making money and looking after America's interests. So we're going to hear a lot of this sort of talk. We're not going to see any major breakthroughs. I think the Ramstein meeting will be interesting because it's going to be chaired by the British for the first time, not by the Americans. The Americans have always been in the chair there. They've always led. Now it's going to be the British, so that's going to be interesting. Again, I think we're going to see more commitments, more shows of support from Ukraine's European partners at Ramstein, certainly, but nothing out of the ordinary. I mean, I think the big announcements that we're all waiting for in terms of a vision for a future peace deal are going to have to wait. That's going to come later in the spring, I think, realistically, perhaps April, perhaps May. That's been my expectation. That remains my prediction. But this is going to be an interesting opportunity for these different guys to come together now, to sit down, to talk, and to sort of feel each other out a little bit, what's possible and what the realities are in terms of what can be achieved in this peace process.
Absolutely. I have my feelings aligned with yours, because I also feel that it's better the decision that is think over in all the parts are taking part in the discussing. And like Ukraine, America, Europe, and then Russia. That sounds more realistic than having a plan that is actually no plan. Okay, well, thank you so very much for your time and for your expertise, Peter. It was, again, a very exquisite pleasure. So thank you. I hope we do it again and again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye. Well, that will be all for tonight. Thank you so very much for your precious time. My name is Henry Keane, and we are UATV English, an English-speaking Ukrainian state media, doing our best to deliver hard truth in easy terms for the whole free world directly from Ukraine. Please like, share, and let us know how we're doing with what we're doing, as your voice matters indeed very much. In turn, it helps Ukrainian voice to be heard globally, so stay safe and tune for more, already tomorrow. Goodbye.